of Infection Control Academy of India and as Honorary Professor of University of Hyderabad is to build robust capacity of infection prevention and control cadre for the world from India, especially for resource-constrained countries and improve professional practice standard for IPC. He is the strong believer of human potential to prevent and overcome the public health emergencies caused by infections. Many public health and infection prevention professionals globally see him as an individual making a difference in infection prevention. His lifelong work in various fields, especially in the field of infection prevention, has made a huge difference in the lives of patients, infection control practitioners, healthcare providers, and anyone who has ever been in contact with him. More than 10,000 healthcare workers were trained through programs designed, developed, like-minded organizations and professionals. He is also the architect of first ever postgraduate level diploma program in IPC in India. Dr. Reddy is the founder trustee of Infection Control Academy of India. He is a recognized healthcare and pharma industry leader with global network and hands-on experience in more than 50 countries worldwide. He has played for entrepreneurship and mentored several NGOs, startups, and micro-scale enterprises, especially in healthcare segment. This is in brief about Rangareddy, sir. Now I request sir to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santosha. Thank you, Dr. Vanitha. I can see Professor Pawan and also others being present on this occasion. And to all the management of Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences and all the colleagues and friends. Today it is indeed my pleasure to be part of this endeavor in order to bring the awareness about advances in science and technology innovations. I think it is a great move, and it is commendable that ICAR and Vishnu educational institutions have taken up this worthy cause. And I am humbled to be part of this August gathering and also to share my humble experiences and knowledge in relation to the healthcare. So give me a moment, I will start sharing my presentation. Is it visible to all?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Excellent. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Santosha, for very kind introduction and very long introduction. You have mentioned about various facets which I deal with, but one facet which I always like to attribute as far as I am concerned, I am a learner like all the people who are attending this session today and who have attended this online FDP for last 4 sessions. I think learning is one thing which had to be constant if we had to talk about the progress in science and technology and also to bring the innovations. I think for a scientist and for a science-tempered person, the life is a journey of learning, right? We never stop learning. If we stop learning, that means we are dead, or we have no way to bring anything good. So coming to today's topic, I had been given the topic today to talk about COVID-19. As we all know, for last 2 years, the whole world is going through a turbulence due to the pandemic of unseen and also the humanity ever probably has faced in the recent century. The last one, as you all know, we had a pandemic which was called as Spanish flu. which took many lives. And many a times when we talk about COVID-19, the current pandemic, we always draw some kind of parallels with the Spanish flu. But those people who have seen or who have suffered from Spanish flu, probably we find them rarely on this earth today when we are going through the turbulence of COVID 19 in our world. So the whole COVID 19 pandemic initially started as an outbreak in Wuhan, and then it rapidly spread to the whole world. And even today, after 2+ years, we are still unable to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That is worrisome. And that's why many people are asking the question, COVID 19, what would be the end game? When it will really disappear? Whether it will disappear, whether we as a humanity and as a science community would be able to find the solutions to eradicate or to eliminate or we had to simply cohabitate with this. And from these last 2 years of our journey with this unprecedented pandemic, what are the lessons we have learned in order to deal with the future pandemics which may arise, probably not like in the past, like once in a century? Probably it would happen much more rapidly, much more frequently. So what are the lessons for future pandemic we would learn? Because today, as I understand, most of you are young scientists, engineers, pharmaceutical professionals, and also other allied professionals. I think the future belongs to you, and probably you are the people. Probably you had to find the solutions in order to make the future of this globe and the earth, kind of safer, in order to habitate, in order to live happily. So let me take you through this presentation, probably which would last for about 50 minutes. And if we are going to be having some time, I will be very happy post the session to take the questions. So now the first slide itself, you can see a man or a woman, with a full PPE kit, pushing actually the coronavirus. I am sure you all recognize this ball-like, spongy ball-like thing as coronavirus with all the spikes, with a very beautiful structure. A man or woman actually pushing up the hill. So what is beyond the horizon what we see in this photo? Is it the end where we are going to reach the pinnacle and then there would be a fall? Or after that fall, are there going to be any other hills which we had to climb again? So this is again, whenever we talk about COVID, there are a lot of memes nowadays and a lot of jokes, which goes around. And this is a kind of a tiger, with a face of COVID, as you can see. A person is saying it is the tail is too long, and somebody is giving the kind of warning that, don't touch, you will just provoke it again. That means you will provoke actually another probably mutation or at another kind of variant which may make further our life miserable. So the world during the last 2 years, especially 2020, when we did not know anything about this pandemic, about this virus, about the structure of the virus, how to diagnose it, how to treat it, how to manage it, etc., etc., we all were huddled in shock. We all were huddled in shock. And in 2020, when we learned a little bit about the structure, the genomic structure of this particular virus, a little bit about the origins of this virus, and also how to manage it, what kind of pharmaceutical and non-pharmaceutical interventions we can do, we in 2021 had some ray of hope that finally we will be able to come out of this. In 2022, we have already had 20 days already spent in this year, 2022. We thought there would be a resemblance of normalcy in 2022. But unfortunately, in November last year, from South Africa, there had been an alarming kind of information that there is yet another variant, which is developing, and probably it can create yet another wave, which is going to swamp the world. So that's why if we accept that coronavirus complete with its new Omicron avatar, or possibly even more variants, I think probably we may say that we will be able to possibly see some kind of normalcy and some normal thing. So here I thought, since this is a topic, COVID-19 is a topic which is evolving topic, and nobody can with certainty say that we know certainly this information. I thought we will have a little bit of participation from your side so that we can see what is your opinion. Maybe you can take a minute and probably go to classpoint.app and start polling on that. So, what is your opinion? COVID-19 endgame is eradication, elimination, cohabitation, or you are not sure about it? I'll just take 30 seconds and probably then we'll move on. Okay, good. I will move on. So we'll see the results probably at a little later time. Looks like it has a very different analysis coming out. No issues. Okay, so I will move on. So before even talking about the current variant Omicron, and also what is going to happen in the future, I would like to very quickly take you through the history of the pandemics. Humans, as we are actually through last 2000 years, it is not the first time that we have faced with a public health emergency of this scale. In the past also, we had a kind of epidemics and pandemics which have actually created a lot of turbulence throughout the human history. And these infections, have spread through all over the world, and infections have been a constant companion of the humans all through our history. Even in our era, outbreaks are nearly constant, almost every month or every quarter. We see some of the other outbreaks happening in some of the other part of the world. Maybe not all those outbreaks would evolve into an epidemic or evolve into a pandemic, but outbreaks have become a constant in our life. Future, I really don't want to kind of give a depressing news, but future looks even more grim. This information, of course, had to be taken in the positive sense of it. We as a scientific community, probably we should take it as a challenge in order to find the solutions to ensure that any of these outbreaks which are going to happen, especially with the zoonotic origin, that we need to find a solution so that these outbreaks are not going to evolve into the epidemics and pandemics and have a toll on the human life and also the suffering which comes with these kind of pandemics suffering in multiple dimensions: the social, economic, and also the health dynamic. So I think we as I told earlier, we as scientists should take it as a challenge in order to find the solutions so that we can stop these epidemics and pandemics even before they are going to happen in the future. So briefly going into the history, if we look at the largest kind of pandemics which have happened in human evolution, or in the 13th century, it was bubonic plague, which has actually swamped the world for almost like 4 years, and it has taken away 200 million lives during that period. And you can imagine the world population at that time was only 375 million as per the various estimates. On the earth at the time had been wiped out. All right. So just to actually have a comparison, the smallpox in 15th century has taken 56 million out of 425 million population at the time, and the Spanish flu, which we talked about earlier, and also which we refer to always when we talk about COVID-19, that is Spanish flu, has taken more than 50 million lives, against the world population of 1.8 billion at the time. So if we really look at the kind of COVID-19 happening today, right, with about 5 million deaths happening, with a population of 7.5 plus billion, probably, if you look at percentage terms, it is relatively small in comparison with the bubonic plague or the smallpox or the Spanish flu, etc., etc. And this all is thanks to all the developments and innovations which has happened in the pharmaceutical side, in the biotechnology side, in the healthcare side, etc., etc. So that has made us a little more prepared than our ancestors in the previous centuries, that is in the 19th century, 15th or 13th century, etc., etc. If we talk about the recent phenomena, that is in last 100 years, 57, 58, we have seen Asian flu, which has taken away something like 1.1 million lives, and 68 to 70 Hong Kong flu, and 2009 to 2010 a swine flu, which has taken a toll of 200,000 people. So now we understood that the pandemics or the COVID-19 is not the only pandemic which the humanity has seen. There had been multiple occasions, and humanity has successfully come out of those pandemics, of course at a cost: the cost of human lives, the cost of displacement, and the cost of probably the turbulence in day-to-day life, including social, economic, etc., etc. But now moving on to the COVID-19, which is the current pandemic, let us take a few facts into consideration. What are the facts? The facts are a COVID-19 pandemic has spread almost every country now. That is, there is no one single country today which is devoid of this infection anymore. COVID-19 infection was present in China, and probably some people say that even it was there in the Europe at the end of 2019. That is well before it has exploded in Wuhan in January 2020. At the beginning of this pandemic, which that time we thought as an outbreak which has happened in the Wuhan city, it had remained confined in the form of small outbursts, or we call it as outbreaks, that failed to spread in a significant way. The kind of explosive kind of transmissibility and the number of positive cases started building up in Wuhan at the end of January, and probably it was due to a combination of unfavorable kind of events, which we call it as amplification effect by the presence of the virus reservoir, and also probably other viable animals or the hosts at the wet market. Once the COVID 19 started going beyond the borders of China and started spreading to Europe and Americas, that is predominantly North America, it acquired enormous increase in the transmissibility, which has reflected in the daily positive cases and also the deaths which have happened. Now, look at what are the open questions, what we still do not understand, what we need to probably at some point in time get a clarity going ahead, right? One question is, why did previous similar coronavirus infections like SARS or MERS have failed to develop to pandemic dimensions, whereas COVID 19 was able to do it? You know that I have mentioned previously, but for the sake of clarity, I will mention again. Not only the pandemics had been part of human evolution, but we have in the last few decades we have seen at least two coronavirus related public health emergencies. Those are SARS and MERS. Both of these epidemics and pandemics have been caused by the coronavirus, especially coming from the group of beta coronaviruses. So we don't know why those coronavirus related infections like SARS and MERS did not take off as epidemic or pandemic in a big way, and why that COVID 19 was able to scale to that level where we see almost half of the population of the world is already one or the other way, either proven through the diagnostic measures or not proven, or already inflicted with this infection. Second question, is there an obligatory intermediate host in the transmission of COVID 19 from bat to humans? Because the earliest theories, we always talked about a jump of this particular virus from the bats into the humans through probably an intermediate host, which could be probably pangolins. Pangolins are one kind of animal which are kind of very frequently taken as a meat. Meat of that animal is taken by the Chinese as a very special dish. Third question is there a decisive factor that must be satisfied by coronaviruses to successfully attack human cells? We still do not have a very definitive answer to that. Why did the fourth question is, why did the COVID-19 infection became so more transmissible from human to human once it has reached Europe and Americas? Before that, why is that? It was relatively transmitting at a lesser speed. We don't know. So all these answers probably we would try and get more definitive answers over a period of time, probably in the next 1 year or so, after during the pandemic and probably after we settle with this pandemic. So we talked about the coronavirus infections in the past, as we all know, and I'm sure you all know that coronavirus is not something which has suddenly come from somewhere from the sky. Coronavirus had been on Earth for million years, and it one part of actually coronaviruses are always in the circulation, which cause a common cold, right? But there are other groups which cause much more severe infections, like what we have seen in the case of SARS, MERS, or currently with the COVID-19. If you look at these coronaviruses, they are many, and there are plenty of plethora of actually genera and plethora of subgroups, which are in circulation on the earth. The first group is alpha coronaviruses, the second group is beta coronaviruses, and the third group is delta and then gamma. These are the four genera, which we frequently talk about. But fortunately, the alpha, delta, and gamma genera does not look to cause any severe infections. Probably, they have become endemic over a period of time. Neither in animals nor in humans, we don't have a documentary evidence that they have caused any severe infections. But whereas the beta coronaviruses are the culprit of the major infections happening in the humans, especially if you look at the current pandemic, which is, again, as we discussed, caused COVID-19 is caused by a beta coronavirus, which we call it now as nCoV-2 SARS virus. And then there was SARS-CoV-1, or SARS-CoV, which caused the SARS, and then MERS. All these are part of the group or the genera which we call beta coronaviruses. So going ahead, probably we need to give a lot of attention to this beta coronavirus group in order to unravel probably some mysteries why this group is so volatile, so virulent, so transmissive, and when they jump from the animals and they spread through the humans, why they cause such a devastation. Probably this is something which is a challenge probably all of you as young scientists could take up in the years to come. Now again, I think there is some glitch. I don't see actually people are able to or not actually to vote. But the question is, the COVID-19 origin is, what do you think? Maybe you can just write it if you are actually on the YouTube. Probably you could put your comments in the comment box. Do you think it is a laboratory leak, or do you think it is a spillover from infected animal, or is it a deliberate bioterrorism, or you are not sure? I will just take a few seconds so that you can think over and actually put an answer on what you think, because there is no definitive answer, as I said, to any of these questions which I am putting today for the quiz. So with our collaborative effort, probably we need to seek the truth and go towards the truth. Good. So I'm sure some of you would have attempted. I would be glad if more can actually be participative in these kind of quizzes.
They are answering in YouTube, sir.
Oh, answering. Very good.
Slowly.
What is the answer, ma'am? If I may know.
Most of them answered for C, opted for C option.
Deliberate.
Then D.
Yeah. Okay.
Then D.
Okay.
Deliberate bioterrorism, it seems. Someone gave their comment in YouTube.
Okay, great. Good. There are various theories. There are theories which are more liberal. More liberal in the sense of actually looking at as a conspiracy. There are more conservative, saying that probably it could be a laboratory link, and some who call themselves as a realist, they say that it is all nonsense, that it is not laboratory leak, neither it is a deliberate bioterrorism. It is just a spill which usually happens very many times actually from the animals into the humans. Spillover is very, very common because I will talk about it actually as one of the causes why actually these pandemics are happening. But taking this occasion, let me mention that because of Anthropocene activity, Anthropocene means human activity which is happening on the earth, we are calling for some of the problems which otherwise would not have been there by devastating the environment, by displacing actually the wild animals from their habitats. We are pushing them to come into the human habitats and kind of transmit some of the viruses or other microorganisms which the humans have never encountered in the past, which actually evolves into a major problem for all of us. So I will go into unfortunately something is not working. So this otherwise it was supposed to show the results here, but doesn't matter. So now we understood the evolution, human evolution, and also the pandemics. We also understood some of the open questions and also some of the facts related to the COVID-19 infection. We also have very briefly reviewed about various genera which are related to coronaviruses. Now, quickly have a look at the snapshot of what is happening with COVID-19 infection worldwide. This is a dashboard which is done by John Hopkins University, the most prestigious university in terms of the public health. This is as of yesterday morning, 10:50. All over the world, we have seen something like 342 million people getting infected. That is 34 crore population all over the world got infected so far officially, and also with diagnostic confirmation. This is the number. The total number of deaths is about 5.5 million, but at the same time, we can talk about a triumph, that is the total vaccine doses which are being administered in the last 1 year. That is a staggering 9.7, almost 10 billion vaccines we have given. We have not only developed, commercialized, but also actually administered to the people all over the world. That is definitely a kind of triumph to the science, and also a laudable effort by the scientists like all of you, the young scientists, and also those who are working across the world in the laboratories, shoulder to shoulder, in order to find the solution to this problem. They have developed these vaccines in the record time and ensured that almost 10 billion vaccine doses are developed, manufactured, and also administered in order to tackle with this scourge of our lifetime. If you look at on your right side on this, there are three distinct kind of graphs which are given. The first one is the weekly cases. As you can see, in 2020 and 2021, and now end of it is 2022, right? You can see that the number of cases are much more higher in 2022 than in 2021 and 2020. That means there is a very high transmissibility of this virus, spilling over all over the world and causing a very high number of positive cases. But the good thing is that there is a decoupling between the weekly deaths and the weekly cases. If you can see in this white graph, you can clearly see that despite of a very big rise in the positive cases, we don't see the corresponding spike or the spurt in terms of the weekly deaths. That is something which is a little comforting for all of us, because we have seen during the second wave, somewhere in the number of cases were rising, and also correspondingly the deaths were also rising, right? Number of people who required hospitalization, who required ICU beds were also rising. But that is not the case with the current wave, which is probably in all sense of it, was driven by Omicron. And as I said, the weekly doses administered are also going up all over the world. Initially, if you look at, this is the beginning of 2021 when the vaccine doses started getting administered worldwide. Initially, it was mostly in the so-called rich or the developed countries, North Americas and Europe, where they could lay their hands on so many vaccines, and they have given to all their population. But thanks to the kind of innovations and also the capacity of emerging nations like India to have indigenous kind of vaccines, the whole process of vaccination has picked up, and it is going in the right direction at the moment. Now, let us look at what is the status in India. Earlier we talked about the world. Now, let us very briefly get a picture on India. It is again, as of yesterday, we have about 3.8 cases, COVID cases, which are diagnosed through the diagnostic measures as the positive cases. And luckily, our deaths were kind of stalled, over a period of time, thanks to all the efforts of healthcare community especially, and of course aided by the pharmaceutical scientists and biotechnology scientists who could very quickly deliver the vaccines and the medicines required in order to tackle with this pandemic. So, if you look at the three graphs here on your right side, you will find almost the same scenario as with the world. There is a complete decoupling which is happening with the cases to the deaths. That is a very heartwarming kind of situation. Well, that is what we have all strived for within the healthcare community, so that we reduce the number of deaths, we reduce the number of serious cases, while the trajectory of the infected cases were rising. I think we can, to some extent, we can proudly say that we could arrest the number of deaths and also the serious cases, which definitely is again and again, I keep saying, attributable to the dedication and also the knowledge and wisdom of the healthcare workers and also other allied professionals. So now coming straight to the Omicron variant, because the current wave we attribute to the Omicron variant, which is declared by the World Health Organization as an variant of concern. I'm sure you all are aware of variant of interest and variant of concern. Variant of interest is when something is evolving which is different from the previous variants. We just start making a note of how it is evolving, and when it starts actually going towards high transmissibility, immune evasion, and also to cause a serious infection, that is the time World Health Organization gives an attribution of a variant of concern. Currently, WHO is following earlier, as you all probably have read through the newspapers and also probably gathered from the media, that at the beginning of the pandemic, most of the variants used to be called by the country of origin, like South African variant, British variant, or London variant, India variant, and all that stuff. Because it causes a little bit of stigma and also there is no scientific basis for that, World Health Organization started giving a nomenclature based on Greek alphabets. Greek alphabet starts with alpha and it goes up to omega. And now we are at the midway with Omicron. So this uh, kind of variant, which has been declared by World Health Organization as a variant of concern, it is slowly taking over the Delta. Uh, During the second wave, most of the cases were, or the predominant cases were with Delta, but in the last 1.5 months, the world over, including every country, including India, we are seeing that Delta very quickly being replaced by Omicron. Today, approximately 90% of the cases what we see are already Omicron. Omicron, which seems to have emerged from an immunocompromised host with a staggering number of mutations. In South Africa, initially it was identified in a HIV/AIDS patient, and probably that person having immunocompromised kind of situation has given or hosted this virus and given the opportunity to mutate in multiple ways, which further has actually evolved into a variant of concern called Omicron. As of now, we have very limited conclusions, but we can already take action. So, looks like the best case scenario is that Omicron is not that severe and probably supplants Delta with something milder. Of course, there are also some people, enthusiasts, who define Omicron probably as a God sent natural vaccine, which probably is not true. I will talk about it a little later because that kind of understanding does not actually sit very well with the kind of evidence what we have about this variant. So nobody should willingly go for getting infected with this variant, as it has been popularly talked about in the media, especially in the social media. So why Omicron is a cause of concern? Because it has staggering number of mutations, some of which suggest an ability to neutralize protections. As we talked about in the past, there are more than 50 mutations in Omicron alone, which is a big cause of concern um, because it can very rapidly, which is already happening, goes like a wildfire and infect many people. If it is infecting, Omicron is infecting only adult population or even children who are having proper immunity, it is not a problem. Probably in 3 to 5 days, they will go through some mild symptoms and come back to the normal life. But if this wildfire like transmission is going to hit more and more immunocompromised or very vulnerable population, that is when probably we will have an issue. That's why we keep always talking about vaccines, despite of the fact that there are breakthrough infections and the reinfections. Still, the vaccines are our best defense, and the people should certainly go for the first and second doses, which would act as a base level immunity against this particular virus. Um, I would not go into the detail of it, but I talked about it that Omicron is very rapidly outcompeting Delta, and which started in Africa, but now which has gone to all the other countries. What are the big questions with Omicron? The first question, which we answered partially, but probably going ahead, we'll get much more clearer picture, is that how well will our vaccines and antivirals like molnupiravir, like other antivirals, are going to work against this variant to prevent infections, transmission, or the severe outcomes. It is almost certain that we there is going to be some loss in infection protection. That means all the viruses, all the vaccines which we have so far, they may not give the same kind of protection for this variant, unlike in the other variants. Because initially, when the vaccine was developed, it was developed based on the Wuhan variant, that is the alpha variant. And against that, certain companies have claimed to have the efficacy of 90%. Some companies have claimed 70, 80, etc., etc. World Health Organization, because of the emergency situation, and it has given emergency usage approval to most of the vaccines who have crossed the threshold of 50% in terms of the efficacy. Let us see, how it is going to be. As I told earlier, that despite of the fact that there is some loss in infection protection with the vaccines, but still they remain a solution, and definitely the first and second doses have to be taken by all the people in order to prevent death or the serious infection. Second question is, will this variant outcompete Delta? If so, is this due to transmissibility or the breakthrough infections? Well, I think we have an answer to this by now, because this data, these questions were framed a little earlier than 2 weeks. So in these 2 weeks, lot of things have evolved, a lot of data is emerging, getting compiled, and we for sure know that the transmissibility is much higher. That is something like 3 to 6 times higher than the Delta variant. And we don't have a clarity whether this transmissibility and the number of infections, positive cases are happening due to the new people or the breakthrough infections. That probably data is still to emerge. But looking at the trends, we can to some extent say that breakthrough infections are also part of this surge what we are currently going through. The third question is it more severe? Looks like it is not. At least looking at the graphs, correlation between the number of cases which are happening and the number of deaths which are happening, there is a kind of evidence, indirect evidence, that this particular variant called Omicron is not severe than Delta. In fact, it is multiple times less severe in terms of hospitalization, in terms of the deaths, than the Delta variant. Well, we don't have the crystal ball to gauge what is going to happen and what kind of scenarios, what kind of scenario is going to be in the future. But as people with the scientific temper, we can certainly develop some scenarios in order to see how things could unfold in the coming months. Like in the business, when the people make the business cases, or in the stock market, they usually make these kind of predictions by developing the scenarios where they talk about bull scenario, base scenario, and bear scenario. And if bull scenario means probably Omicron will completely occupy the entire 100% of all the infected patients, and removing all the other variants like Delta, which are much more severe and much more virulent. And because of that, probably the population also probably to some extent build the immunity, and the current vaccines probably would still work in a significant way in terms of protecting the people. The bear variant is probably going out of control, where the Delta and Omicron both are going to be in the circulation. Probably it would evade all the kind of vaccines which are currently available, and probably it would the kind of surge in the infections may lead into some kind of sanctions or some kind of restrictions. Maybe it would not go to the lockdown, but certainly probably it would lead into some kind of night curfews or restricted movement of travel, etc., etc. So this is just to have a kind of picture how what kind of scenarios can happen in the future. Looking ahead, I think we talked already about it. Vaccine efficiency, or efficacy. We have seen from whatever we have got the data so far that there is a neutralization assays will provide first real data on Omicron's ability to resist immunity that we already have to some extent. Breakthrough infections are happening, but we don't have complete data to say to what extent the current vaccines are providing the kind of protection with the Omicron variant. In the days or probably weeks to come, we will know much more clearly. Transmissibility and the reinfection, we talked about it. Severity, we talked about it. Now, very quickly look at what are the no regrets actions we had to take while we wait for the answers for all those open questions which we have discussed earlier. One is vaccines are the best weapon which is available in our hands at the moment, and we had to focus on that. We had to ensure that there is a vaccine equity. That means the people, irrespective of their economic ability, or the countries, irrespective of their economic ability, had to have the access to the COVID-19 vaccine in order to ensure that they are going to means every citizen on this earth is going to have equitable access to the vaccines, so that we don't need to see any more mutations or the variants due to a lack of this vaccination. Containment, probably to some extent, may slow the spread, especially the containment when we talk about it is all the contained places like cinema theaters, or where there is a very high number of people congregate in a very limited space with a poor ventilation. That is those are the places to be avoided and contained, and definitely some kind of restrictions had to be put on that. Quarantines, probably sometime they can also buy some time to get robust surveillance. We can use more and more testing in order to find out immediately what is happening, and also we had to keep untiredly, because sometimes it is tiring when we constantly talk about wear the mask, wash the hands and all that stuff. But we, as responsible citizens and the knowledgeable people, we had to constantly talk about these COVID appropriate behavior and optimized public health measures like masking, testing, contact tracing, etc., etc., in order to minimize the harm to the public. And we also need to protect the vulnerable. We talked about it. Although Omicron is less severe in terms of the infection, but still the vulnerable population, even with that mildness, can go into some kind of severity. We had to ensure that the measures are in place to keep the virus out of our most vulnerable settings, especially where there are older people, aged people, who can very quickly turn into, the kind of severe infection kind of scenario. We talked about vaccines and the treatments. We already have vaccines, but as we already talked about, some of the vaccines are losing their potency against the new variants, and hence the companies and also the governments and the World Health Organization, multilateral organizations, had to start thinking about the vaccines which are going to work pan COVID. That means, irrespective of what is the variant, they should be able to work. Or the multivalent ones, means taking all the important variants and develop a multivalent vaccine, like quadruple vaccine, or uh, whatever pentavalent vaccine, etc., etc. We have such examples, as we all know that every year the people get the flu zaps, where the vaccines are made of multiple kind of variants, and so that they are protected against the seasonal flu. The same thing can be replicated here. And the treatments, I think we need to get better antivirals. Already we have in India and worldwide new antivirals coming, something like molnupiravir, etc., etc. But again, molnupiravir, antivirals, have got its own limitations, because it has got teratogenic effects and other side effects, which would not allow us to give to generally to the majority population. So we need to get much more safer antivirals, much more effective antivirals, so that we can come out of this particular situation. So we talked about the historical evolution. We talked about all the kind of pandemics which have happened in the past. We talked about the coronaviruses. We talked about the numbers which are happening in the worldwide. We talked about the current surge, which is driven by Omicron. So now, it is the time probably to take the opinion of some of the major scientists, working especially in India. You all probably would have heard about Dr. Gagandeep. She is a virologist from CMC Vellore. She said, even if Omicron is showing milder symptoms, it does not mean COVID is over. We will see more waves, and in unvaccinated populations, the rise of new variants. So this is something which we had to keep in mind in terms of going into the future, managing this pandemic. You also probably would have heard about Professor Mulian, who is part of NIE Chennai, and he is part of the Scientific Advisory Committee. Uh, he, I think, very succinctly, he has said, if we do not change our mindset from that of the dreaded corona to a benign cold, it will be a greater challenge. As a population, we will not be able to face it. I think the truth, these are two different dimensions probably, but there is some kind of correlation. Probably the truth lies somewhere in between alarm on one side, on the other side, giving a complete green channel. I think the truth is somewhere in between, where we need to kind of optimize our actions, not getting panicked at the same time, and deal with the kind of pandemic as it is going to kind of unravel, and ensure that right actions are taken at the right time. These are kind of picture where we have predicted what is the kind of potential Omicron related hospitalizations. Probably it is not something which is very important. So now let us take a very quick break and answer this question, that COVID-19, from whatever you heard so far, will it be endemic? If it is so, will be endemic be over in what time? 1 quarter, 1 year, several years, and you are not sure about it. If you could put your answers, that would be real helpful. I don't have access to your YouTube answers. Maybe Dr. Santosha
Uh,
will help me.
I'm monitoring, sir. Still, I mean, it may take 1 or 2 minutes for them to respond and to reflect in YouTube. So I'm Several years, sir. One have answered several years.
Okay,
Their opinion.
interesting.
And
COVID
another one also answered several years.
COVID-19 will be endemic in 1 quarter, 1 year, several years, and or you are not sure.
C and D, sir.
Okay.
Many
Good.
have opted for C. One or two opted for D. That's all.
Thank you very much for your very valued kind of feedback. Um, Let us see, how it is going to evolve. As I said, we as scientists, we don't rely on crystal balls, right? We as scientists would rely, or the doctors as a physician, I would rely more on the data. To talk in the next few slides about what are going to be the scenarios in terms of how this COVID-19 would evolve as endemic or not. Okay, let me move into the next slide. So this is a beautiful picture in the background. As you can see, a very relaxing uh, hills and slopes. Probably in a normal time, without all those stickers which are put onto that, probably it would be a very relaxing one. But unfortunately, currently I wanted to use this in order to illustrate how it probably the pandemic would evolve. There are two ways probably. As you can see, the man in the PPE again appearing here. So we talked about actually taking this COVID ball to the hilt, whether it is going to uh, fall down here and leave us with a happy end, or it is going to further come down and take another hill and cause yet another variant called pi, or even more variants like rho or sigma and beyond. That's why I have put many dots there. The dots are from travel from sigma to omega, which is the last word in Greek alphabet. So as of now, honestly, we don't know, but looks like I will take you through that in my next slide. Looks like it may be endemic, and also it may also have more variants. And if it is going to turn into endemic, probably all these things would not be there, but we keep seeing an outbreak from time to time. Probably like what we see with, let's say, cholera, what we see with measles, what we see probably with Ebola. You would probably gather from newspapers from time to time that Ebola suddenly outbreak has happened in such and such country suddenly. And some people died, right? So and the health authorities would take immediate actions in order to contain that particular outbreak in that area itself, so that it doesn't spill over and it doesn't actually evolve into an epidemic or the pandemic in many cases. So probably this is one scenario what can happen. This is the other scenario which is also a possibility. Now, uh, so, based on the studies done by the Nature is a very respectable journal. Based on that publication, there are various scenarios which are being developed. There are basically three scenarios, which are being developed. One scenario, which is kind of very optimistic scenario, is that we might eradicate. That is the best case scenario, right? In the medium case scenario is that the virus will continue to circulate and could cause severe illnesses. And more benign, more serious kind of situation would be the virus will continue to circulate, but once people are protected from severe illness, it might cause only mild to moderate disease. So these are the kind of scenarios. It will all depend on, does immunity wane or immunity is going to remain, whether the current vaccines are going to work or not, whether we as a population and we as governments are going to take enough measures in order to not give the opportunity to the virus to uninhibitedly circulate and transmit and cause the infections worldwide. So, the point here I'm trying to make is mostly how the scenario is going to build up is going to be dependent on our behavior, our government's behavior, and our planet's and leaders' behavior on how we are going to, uh, act. Because as of now, although we talked about almost like 10 billion vaccines given to the world population, unfortunately, even today, in the less developed and economically poor nations in Africa, have less than 20% of their population getting 2 doses of vaccine. That means by kind of denying them the opportunity for vaccination and to build up their immunity, we are causing a problem for ourselves, going ahead. Because we already have seen Omicron in most probability that has evolved because the people did not have the access to the vaccines, and some of these immunocompromised patients have given the virus a shelter to uninhibitedly mutate and evolve into a very dangerous kind of variant. It is not that that kind of scenarios, that kind of situation is not going to happen. It will happen till we are going to bring the vaccine equity and the health equity for every person on this earth. Endgame, endemic feature, like I have thrown a couple of quizzes to you. Nature journal also did their poll, and 89% of the scientists there in that poll, I also polled into this particular nature journal's quiz. uh, Most of the scientists have felt that SARS-CoV-2 was either very likely or likely to become endemic virus. That means it probably over a period of time will become part and parcel of our life. So, we talked about the human behavior. When there is a surge, we all actually start masking, double masking, doing, instead of 3 times hand washing, 100 times, etc., etc. But when the crisis is over, we go back to our usual inefficiency, which is again giving an opportunity for the virus to move on. But how do we reduce this periodicity of the outbreaks in if it is going to be endemic? What could be the driving factors? The driving factors, again, as per the nature, are immune escape, waning immunity, uneven vaccine distribution. I talked about it. Uh, in the poor countries and economically weak countries, even today, the number of vaccinated people are not crossing 25%, which is a dangerous situation for all of us. On the other side, vaccine hesitancy, lack of political will, animal reservoirs, these are all going to be the driving factors, and biggest factors that would drive SARS-CoV-2 circulation in people if it became endemic. And we talked earlier about all these social media, etc., etc. Social media, etc., etc., where the infodemic has played a very bad role in terms of giving the wrong information to the people, which actually has kind of sidetracked some of our efforts. So I would not go into the detail of it, but I just wanted to make sure that all of you should understand infodemic is a big problem, especially during the pandemics. And you, as young, bright scientists and people with the scientific temper, whenever some information comes to you, you have to validate before actually circulating, so that we don't need to come into a situation because of the wrong information the people are going to suffer, or we ultimately as a human race are going to suffer. Well, we talked about the pandemic and how it evolved, what is the danger, and how what are the number of cases, deaths, etc., etc. So, what is the solution? How do we go about it? What are the factors behind the emergence of infectious outbreaks in especially last 3 decades? Understanding this probably would give some kind of understanding, some kind of formula, or some kind of action plan for us to effectively deal and prepare ourselves for the future emergencies. As per the World Health Organization, vast number of global health emergencies which were declared in the last decade were happening in 2020 and 2000 onwards itself. Something like the Zika, Ebola, etc., were the outbreaks which has moved us into the epidemic. So the five major factors, are um, factors which are behind the emergence of infectious outbreaks, or the natural environment, the population, urbanization, health, hygiene, travel, and trade. Uh, I would have actually dwelled into the detail of it because of the paucity of time. I would not go into the detail of it, but very quickly touch upon natural environment is a very crucial factor, because the ecosystem, earth ecosystem, has been severely impacted in last few decades because of greed of humanity, which has led to kind of environmental decline, which is causing a huge toll on the health index of the globe. Second one is population. As you know that the population is growing exponentially. If you look at as um, early as 1950s, we had only 2.6 billion population. Today we already reached 7.5 billion, and probably by 2100 we would be crossing something like 11 billion. This kind of uh, explosion of the population is going to also have a severe impact on developing all these kind of infections. Urbanization, very close packed colonies and dense population. Uh, Definitely, it is kind of a breeding ground for humanitarian disasters, especially the kind of infections what we are talking about. Health hygiene. Uh, Even today, more than half of the world, especially economically weak countries, we India is a little better than some of the other countries, but more than 50% have access to the clean water, a proper sanitation, and health hygiene, food, shelter, etc., which is again is a breeding ground for all the infectious outbreaks which are going to happen in the future. Travel and trade, and as we know that the mode of travel has evolved, the trade and connectivity has evolved for some good, but also at the same time some bad, because today the rapidity and the speed at which we can travel from one place to the other place is so fast that what happens today in New Delhi, within 12 to 14 hours, it can have its own reflection in another part of the world, that is probably in US or in some opposite part of the world. So with this kind of kind of a global increase in the travel, trade, and connectivity. Definitely, it is going to have a huge risk of infectious diseases rise, and we as nations need to build a robust system in order to ensure that this travel and trade, while it is going to continue, but it is not going to have impact on our health. Emerging infections, those are very rapidly increasing in incidence. I talked about it, and we are seeing more and more novel and also zoonotic infections. And it is all related to the anthropogenic causes. That is, we are occupying more and more land. Although, we are less than 10% of the mass of all the living beings on Earth, but we almost occupy 90% of all the space, and also all the kind of utilities and natural resources, etc., etc., which is going to have its own uh, problem in the days to come. What are the common pathways? That is wildlife contact, hunting, live animal markets. We talked about it. As far as the healthcare settings is concerned, it is having the right kind of infection prevention and control practices, which are lacking in many countries. As I told you, that even uh, the basic needs like clean water is not available in more than 40% of healthcare settings in developed world. Which is a huge problem, which can be a big threat in terms zoonosis in disease emergence, uh, because of this kind of network, and also the kind of trade and human travel. There are going to be, and also the environmental degradation. We are going to see more and more zoonosis, uh, that is zoonotic infections, or the infections which are caused by the viruses or other microorganisms coming from the animals spill over into the humans. That disease emergency is going to be heavy. Uh, there are about 1,400 human pathogens, and 58% of them are zoonotic origin. And this is going to be a huge problem. And uh, probably there had to be a lot of work which had to go into this in terms of understanding this zoonosis, and understanding how to prevent them from emerging, and if they are going to emerge, how we are going to kind of manage them. These are the examples of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. I will not go through that. I will probably, some of you who are interested, in the end, I will be showing my mail ID. You can write to me, and you will be able to get the presentation so that you can go through that. So, what are the lessons from this pandemic? The first lesson is, we were, as usual, not prepared, because when it has happened, we were all caught unaware, and we failed to recognize spread by asymptomatic individuals, which has caused a huge spillover effect and a very rapid kind of wildfire like transmission to other regions and other continents. And second thing is, we lacked global and also the regional coordination or the strategic planning. We did not have the diagnostics which are futuristic, which could have helped actually very quickly diagnose and take immediate steps. Uh, and probably we also had a shortage of both uh, PPEs, consumables, medicines, etc., etc. And due to the rise in the social media, although social media is good, if we are able to effectively use it, But in the beginning of the pandemic, because of the infodemic, because of the wrong information, a lot of nations and we all have suffered with lot many theories which have no factual basis. So the question here would be, what would you do to prevent the next pandemic? So there are no options given here. It is not multiple choice. Probably you can give your opinion on this. I would move on, but you can leave your comments in the YouTube. Are we ready for the next disease X? Looks like not. So, probably the next disease, which is going to be again caused by another zoonotic, with the current kind of preparedness, probably we cannot say with kind of, you know, uh, conformity that, we are ready for the next disease. So, infectious disease responses and threats, we talked about it. Broadly, I will touch upon. We had to have a lot of investment into research and development of biomedical countermeasures. We had to have a whole arsenal of vaccines, antimicrobials, diagnostics, monoclonals, etc., etc. Our surveillance had to improve. Our public health infrastructure had to improve. Our monitoring and also preparedness for outbreaks and biosecurity incidents had to improve. You see, in this case, we asked a question in the beginning itself, and some of you had opined that this may be a deliberate action or a bioterror. If that is going to happen, what is going to be our action? What is going to be our kind of action plan and game plan? That we are not very clear. I think there had to be a lot of coordinated effort in order to prepare for the future, and if there is no guarantee that in the future we are not going to have the bioterrorism with these kind of microorganisms, and hence our preparedness had to go up. So in the end, I would like to conclude. There are two more slides left, but I would like actually flash onto all your screen. 1, 2, 3. Please wear a mask. The COVID-19 pandemic is not yet over. Have a social distance, or we call nowadays as a physical distance. Keep away from the crowds. And 3, wash your hands frequently in order to ensure not only to avoid COVID-19 but also other emerging infections. Are we ready? You can also leave that answer. In conclusion, I would like to bring here three different points, which three major scientists have talked about. One is a Lancet publication on January 19th, about a couple of days back, which has said COVID-19 will continue, but the end of the pandemic is near. That is what Lancet says. Zephyr Gordon, a good friend, he says that mutually beneficial relationships between microbes and animals are a pervasive feature of life on our microbe dominated planet. We as human beings are no exception. That means we as humans have to take the responsibility and ensure that there is a balance between human life, animal life, and environment life. That means our human health is now interrelated with animal life, animal health, and also environment health. And hence, we had to do everything in order to ensure that after the Omicron variant, COVID probably would, we had to ensure that it would not return, and another pandemic is not yet going to happen, and we had to prepare ourselves and also our planet to take over any of those threats which are going to emerge in the future. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I know that it is a little longish one, but in the end, I would like to invite you all to join hands to prevent infections. You can see the details here. You can get in touch with us You can, if you want to actually volunteer, you can also volunteer so that we can bring right kind of solutions for the preparedness. Thank you very much once again. All the best. Stay safe. If there are
Thank
any
you, sir.
questions, I would be.
Questions are many, sir. I think we can take one or two, keeping time in mind. I'll post few questions, sir. Later on, I'll mail you all the questions to your mails
Sure.
so that you can answer. Okay, sir.
Sir,
Firstly, sir, I request,
thank
sir.
you so much, sir. I think it's a wonderful pleasure for sparing your valuable time. And I think me being an affected person, I think what you have told are very relevant, and I wish that the delegates got the best advantage over your talk, sir. Thank you so much once again, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll ask one or two questions, sir.
Yeah, please.
Then we'll move on. So why World Health Organization is confused over Omicron? Sometimes says nothing to worry. Again, cautions us saying it would be dangerous. How to read between the lines in WHO updates?
Well, one thing what we all need to be mindful about is COVID-19 is an extraordinary situation where the information and also the science related to the COVID-19 is evolving. We do not have definitive answers for a lot of questions. World Health Organization is trying to bring as much verified information as possible. Sometimes, yes, not all the information can be 100% right, but fortunately or unfortunately, we do not have any other options other than World Health Organization, which is leading us through this pandemic. In regard to specifically Omicron, why there are diverse opinions. In fact, you may feel that there is a dichotomy, but as far as a healthcare professional and a public health professional is concerned, I think there is no dichotomy. What World Health Organization has talked about Omicron is very, very clear. They said there are three factors always we need to keep in mind. What number one is whether the virus or the variant is more transmissible or not. Two, whether it can cause severe infection or not. Three, whether this particular variant is evasive to the current immunity which is being built either by vaccines or the natural infections. So answering these questions, initially when the data was not sufficient, they were not sure about whether breakthrough infections would happen or not, right? Once that has happened, once they had more data, they started talking about it. So World Health Organization always had taken this position that Omicron is going to be less severe disease, but with something like 3 to 10 times more transmissibility. That means it is going to go like a wildfire. I think irrespective of what is the opinion of several people to discredit World Health Organization, I think they are doing at the moment a good job, and we should provide necessary support by all the governments, because there were times when US has actually during the previous President Trump, they have almost gone on a collision path with WHO, which has paralyzed them. So WHO is a body which unites all the nations. All the nations, if they are going to provide necessary support, only then they can function properly and they can come with the right kind of solutions. Santosha garu,
Sir,
back to you.
thank you, sir. Next question is, why is the duration of protection of the vaccines is low, contrary to other vaccines we have for other conditions?
Well, as we all know that the vaccines for viral infections itself is a little tedious in terms of development. especially for mRNA viruses. This coronavirus, the beta coronaviruses group, including, belongs to mRNA viruses. mRNA viruses have got a very high, kind of periodicity in terms of how they very quickly mutate. Because when they are going to replicate, there is always a chance of error. The chance of error while replicating is so high, especially in NCOV2, that it is very quickly evolving with a lot of mutations, and during these mutations, it is able to find the ways to evade the immunity which is developed either by natural infection or through the vaccine-based immunity. This is going to be common. I think we don't have a permanent solution, especially for viral infections. I just would give one example: the flu vaccine, influenza. Even today, we do not have a kind of permanent vaccine, right? Every year, the flu influenza is going to mutate, and it is coming with the new variants, and hence every year the ZAB had to be developed and given a new kind of manufacturing from year to year. So that is the kind of scenario. mRNA viruses are difficult to stop, but I am sure going ahead with the people like you coming at the helm of affairs, probably you would find a much more reliable solution to deal with even mRNA virus-driven infections and find a long-lasting solution with vaccines.
Thank you, sir. Although it's a big issue, you could conclude it within an hour. It's very difficult since it is a long process and it's ongoing. It needs a lot of discussions, debates and all, but still you have crushed it into an hour and given us enough information for the upcoming pharmacists to get enough information about COVID-19, sir. Now, I would like to propose vote of thanks, sir.
Please.
A very good afternoon to the respected dignitaries, principal, faculty, delegates, and my dear students from various colleges across India. Myself, Dr. Santosha, Associate Professor of VIPER and Coordinator of this program, propose vote of thanks on behalf of VIPER for the 5th day session of FDP or SDP on recent advances in science and technology innovations. First and foremost, I would like to thank our today's guest, Dr. Rangareddy Garu, who has given us enough information coverage on COVID-19 endgame, eradication, elimination, or cohabitation, and enlightening us with valuable information. Thank you, sir, and we are grateful for your great talk, and we are expecting your talks in the near future in our institution, sir. And I thank our management, Sri Vishnu Educational Society, for trusting us and always embracing us to conduct such events. I thank our principal, Dr. A. Ramesh, sir, chairman of the event, who always stood behind us and motivated us to organize more such events. Special thanks to Dr. O.N. Tiwari, sir, principal scientist, ICAR, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi, and co-chairman of the FDP program. I extend my thanks to Dr. K. Vanita, HOD Pharmaceutics, convener of the FDP. I also thank organizers who are well planned and executed the program. And I extend my thanks to the networking and supporting team who played a major role, since this is an online program, for making it a huge success. Their contribution is greatly needed. And thanks to all faculty, delegates, and students of VIPER and various organizations across India for participating in the event and making it a huge success. At the end, I would like to request all the delegates to fill the feedback link shared in the end of the session. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rangareddy, sir, and thank you all the delegates for attending and making it a huge success. Thank you, sir. I request all the delegates to join us for valedictory after 10 minutes. Thank you.
Can I leave now?
So you can leave.
A very good afternoon to our beloved Principal Sir, Dr. A. Ramesh, dignitaries, Dr. Rangareddy Burri, President, Infection Control Academy of Indian Council for Agriculture Research, and all the faculty and delegates. Myself, am Sandhya, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmaceutics. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to the valedictory ceremony of 1 week online student and faculty development program titled Recent Advances in Science and Technology Innovations, organized by Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, Narsapur, in collaboration with Indian Agriculture Research Institute, New Delhi. Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, due to its innovation, dynamism, and persistence for seeking and adopting innovative methods to improve the quality of higher education, has now established itself as one of the pioneer pharmacy colleges in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Recently, VIPER has ranked 72nd in India in NIRF ranking, and we can proudly say that VIPER is the only college in Telangana to have NIRF ranking. Moving further to the program, now I would like to call upon our young and dynamic principal of VIPER, Dr. A. Ramesh, onto the stage. Good afternoon, sir. I am very glad to invite the convener of the program, Dr. K. Vanitha, onto the stage. Good afternoon. I am very glad to invite today's guest of honor, Dr. Oyen Tiwari, onto the stage. It's my privilege to welcome today's chief guest, Dr. Rangareddy Burri, onto the stage. Good afternoon, sir. Deepam Jyoti Parabrahma, Deepam Jyoti Janardana, Deepone Harato Papam, Deepam Jyoti Namostute. A ray of light is a ray of hope. Let's all leave the darkness and step towards the bright path. Now we will have our traditional auspicious lamp lightening ceremony as a tribute to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. Now I request all the dignitaries on the dais to light the lamp and symbolically inaugurate this program. I request everyone to stand up for the prayer.
ॐ गङ्गणपतये नमो नमः सिद्धिविनायक नमो नमः अष्टविनायक नमो नमः मङ्गलमूर्ति मोरया गङ्गणपतये नमो नमः सिद्धिविनायक नमो नमः अष्टविनायक नमो नमः मङ्गलमूर्ति मोरया ॐ गङ्गण ॐ गङ्गणपतये नमो नमः सिद्धिविनायक नमो नमः
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Now I request Dr. K. Vanitha, HOD, Department of Pharmaceutics, convener of the event, to present report of 1 week online FDP on recent advances in science and technology innovations.
A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries present over here. Dr. A. Ramesh, Principal, VIPER, Chairman of this event. Dr. Oyen Tiwari, Principal Investigator, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and Co-Chairman of this event and Guest of Honor. Dr. Rangareddy Burri, Chief Guest of this event. Staff, students of VIPER, delegates from various institutions across the country. I, Dr. K. Vanitha, HOD, Pharmaceutics, VIPER, convener of this event, welcome you all to the valedictory event of 5-day FDP on recent advances in science and technology innovations in collaboration with ICAR IARI. I'm happy to share the report of this 5 days event. For this 5 days event, Chief Patron Sri K. Vishnuraj Garu, Chairman SVES, Patron Ravichandran Rajgopal, Vice Chairman SVES, Chairman Dr. A. Ramesh, Principal VIPER, Co-Chairman Dr. O.N. Tiwari, Principal Scientist IARI, Convener Dr. K. Vanita, HOD, Department of Pharmaceutics, Coordinator Dr. D. Santosha, Associate Professor VIPER, Organizers Mr. Fahimuddin and G. Suryam from VIPER. I'm happy to share that we have 872 registrations from across the country. 5 eminent speakers are delivered the plenary lectures. On 18th of this month, the plenary lecture delivered by Dr. O.N. Tiwari on biotechnological potential, conservation of cyanobacterial MGA falling under Indo-Burman biodiversity hotspots towards commercial applications. For these plenary lectures, we have 1,683 YouTube views. On 19th, plenary lecture was delivered by Dr. P. Pavan Jutur on self-factorial new frontiers and innovations in the era of industrial biotechnology. For this lecture, we have 1,056 YouTube views. On 20th, plenary lecture was delivered by Dr. Gopinath Haldar on biosorptive irradiation of ibuprofen from contaminated aqueous media using activated biochar. For this, 1,182 YouTube views. On 21st, we have 2 plenary lectures. Forenoon session was delivered by Dr. Soumya Sasimal on current and future trends in second generation bioethanol production. YouTube views was 406. Afternoon sessions was delivered by Dr. Bishwanath Bunia on recent development in production, purification and characterization of microbial enzymes. YouTube views were 406. Today, we have plenary lecture delivered by Dr. Rangareddy Burri on COVID-19 endgame, eradication, elimination, and cohabitation lessons learned for future preparedness. We'll get that updated YouTubes by the evening. Yeah, this is in brief about the 5 days FDP and recent advances in science and technology innovations. Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ma'am. One tree can start a forest. One word can frame a goal. One candle can wipe out darkness. A true person has a confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the need of others is an art. This is one of the deserving quality of our principal, Dr. A. Ramesh. Now I request Principal Sir to propose welcome note.
Very good afternoon to the distinguished guests here. Dr. Rangareddy, President ICAI, Dr. O.D. Tiwari, O.N. Tiwari sir, who is a member and one of the key person who started this program. My dear convener, Dr. Vanita, co-convener Dr. Santosha, my staff members, and all the delegates. Really, I think I can say proudly that this is one of the program conducted by VIPER and which has got the highest views. So I think the credit goes to the person who has started this program, Dr. Tiwari sir. Thank you for starting it. And most importantly, with the main person ending it. And I think we are lucky. And thank you so much, Rangareddy sir. Despite your busy schedule, you made your time here. And it's fortunate for all of us to meet you all in person, despite Omicron issues prevailing entirely. And I think, and I thank that whole team of VIPER for making it a grand success. And I think it's indeed the time where the topics were also very well tactfully included into the FDP, and I think many of the students, right from starting of the microorganisms and ended with Omicron, and I think thank you all the participants, all the speakers who are available for the whole week, and I personally thank Tiwari sir for bringing all of them and making it a grand success. And I think once again, to end up, I think it's indeed a great privilege for the Vishnu Educational Society for always constantly supporting us as a backbone. And I think we all are privileged, and the achievements of VIPER is greatly because of our lateral thinking of our management. And that's the reason I think here we are sitting here, a doctor, an agricultural research person here, and a pharmacy, where we collaborate each other, and definitely that is the future. Earlier, we were only confined to our college, only related to pharmacy, pharmacology, pharmaceutics. But now, with all these avenues floating in, I think it's a good time for all of us to work combinedly and ensure that it will be a team effort which can only be more successful. Thank you, and with this small note, once again, thank you, Sandhya, for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I am very delighted to introduce our guest of honor, Dr. O.N. Tiwari, Principal Scientist, Indian Council for Agriculture Research. Your presence is a reflection of the importance that is attached to the commitment of quality of the student education. Sir is a task force member for DST since 2009 onwards. Sir has received Honorary Fellowship Award for 3 times. Sir has completed 7 mega projects. Each project is more than 100 lakhs. Sir has 152 research publications, international and 30 Indian journal and 19 book chapters. With this brief introduction, I am glad to welcome Dr. O.N. Tiwari sir to address the gathering.
Thank you, madam, for nice introduction. Actually, I am not deserving for such kinds of the big words because I am a part of this program. If you are welcoming to me, then probably it may not good. If I am a guest, then it's okay for me, but I am a part. Since this program has been organized by the VIPER and Indian Agriculture Research Institute, so, but anyway, respected Professor Ramesh, Dr. Rangareddy, Dr. Vanita, and all persons working very hardly for grand success of this program. And most importantly, the management of the VIPER, like the Chief Patron, Dr. K. Vishnu Raju, Patron Dr. Ravichandran Rajgopal, all peoples, including Dr. Pawan Jutur, Dr. Gopinath Haldar, Dr. Vishwanath Bhunia, Dr. Soma Sasmal. They are very high class scientists and faculty in this country, and they are unparalleled in their fields. They, on one call of the Dr. Vanita, they very kindly accepted her request and ready and delivered a good talk. That's why you can see the number of viewers are very high. As Dr. Ramesh, Principal Sahab of this college, mentioned that this is the most success program of the VIPER. Yes, I do also agree after seeing the numbers of VIPER. All these things are already spoken by the people. So I would like to give some brief idea about the genesis of this program. Almost 1 month ago, Dr. Vanita one day called me and she said ki we are in very tough situation. So can we go for such kinds of the program where we can join with you and we may organize some lecture series or something like this. 1 day or 2 days program. Then I said, why you are not planning in big way? Don't think in a very short way. You plan in big way, whatever possible from my side. And I have a very good team, bunch of the very renowned biologists of this country is working with us. So I will request them to collaborate or coordinate with you. She was little bit worried if I will take this challenge in a very big way since I have not organized such kinds of things. So I said, don't worry, whatever possible from our side, we will support you. And that's why today we are saying that this is the biggest program of the VIPER, particularly in this COVID era. Otherwise, VIPER is a very renowned organization. They are doing great in terms of the research, teaching, extension, everything. VIPER is no need to introduce. VIPER is having very high grade rating. But this is a new era, what Vanita said, so all credit Vanita did. So all credit goes to Vanita, Santosha, Fahimuddin and the team members who worked behind the curtain or in the front of the curtain. Because for the success of anything, there may be the 100 people are working, but only few are coming in forward. Most of them are supported from the back side. Of course, this is my third visit of this premier organization, Narsapur. 4-5 years ago, I got the opportunity and visited. That time I was not knowing anyone except Principal Sahab. Second time when I visited, I got an opportunity to meet Vanita Santosha under one DST sponsored project. And this is my third visit, but I am glad, and every time whenever I am returning back, having a very good memory, and I am glad if I will get any opportunity in future, I would like to work even more than better what we did today. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir. It's always our pleasure to for us to be here, sir. Now, I'm very elated to have our chief guest, Dr. Rangareddy Burri, President, Infection Control Academy of India. Dr. Rangareddy is a physician, public health activist, educator, philanthropist, and social entrepreneur with interest in business verticals of high social impact. He is focused on public health awareness, education, and training. Dr. Reddy is the founder trustee of Infection Control Academy of India. Now I request sir to address the virtual participants.
Colleagues, friends who are on the other side of the digital space, distinguished colleagues on the stage, Professor Ramesh, Professor Tiwari, Professor Vinita, Professor Santosha, and other colleagues. I am indeed fortunate and absolutely delighted to be part of this program, where the Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences Research and Education has done a tremendous job bringing together the kind of disciplines which you usually don't see them on one stage. I think it is a laudable effort, and I certainly commend the management and also the principal and all the very energetic and enthusiastic team who has put together such a great program. Now, since I had been given this opportunity to speak a few words from this podium, I would like actually to go back to the discussion we had about an hour back about COVID, the pandemic, which is giving sleepless nights to probably everybody on this earth. The biggest problem currently what the planet Earth is facing is how do we come out of this situation? How did we end up in this situation? What is the way out? Whether we would see a light at the end of the tunnel or we are going to suffer further. Whether this suffering is going to be a momentary one for a couple of months, couple of years, or this is going to be a part and parcel of our life getting into some kind of new normal which was never thought as a normal in the past. Linking this program to our kind of situation with the pandemic, it is absolutely very clear that when it comes to the human health, there is no one specialty which cannot bring something useful onto the table in order to resolve the situation. While we were having this roller coaster journey of last 2 years with this COVID-19, we have seen all kinds of specialties coming up together, working shoulder to shoulder in order to find a formidable, long-lasting solution so that we not only come out of this particular scourge which we are going through, but also find a definitive solution for probably the future public health emergencies of international concern which are not ruled out at the moment. Going ahead, although we may come out of this COVID-19 situation probably in a couple of years or whatever it may be, but that is not going to be the end of it. Probably even in our lifetime, we may have to face many more epidemics and pandemics, especially for those who are on the other side of the digital connect today, the young, energetic people with scientific temper, probably 1,000 of them who are watching today. You are going to play a very vital role for the problems which are happening today and which are going to be in perpetuity for our humanity. We all had to join hands from multiple disciplines. Today we have seen how varied is the kind of panel to take up this FDP, SDP on recent advances in science and technology innovations. I think this is a small sample of how the collaboration had to happen between the agronomists, between the pharmacists, between the public health professionals, clinicians, etc., etc. If we had to find more definitive solutions, we need more of these collaborations to happen. There is, as I told in the beginning, that there is no distinction. And there is no one specialty which we may say, they are not required. As simple things which probably we cannot relate to, like flying the drones, also had been a part of the solution to the current pandemic. The people from the software who are sitting somewhere writing some algorithms or some formulas, they have made a huge contribution in terms of making the information available to the people at the right time through the right mode, which has to some extent alleviated the problem. And I am today standing in a great institution called as Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, which is the torchbearer in the Telugu states for education and research in pharmaceutical sciences. And I would use this opportunity to call upon the Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research. I am not calling it as VIPER because somehow I am not feeling comfortable to call it as VIPER. So I am calling the long name of it. So the faculty and the students and several other postgraduates and research students, who are working here. Let us take the pandemic currently, which has thrown a big challenge, as an opportunity for us in order to bring newer products, newer solutions, so that we can help the humanity to not only pass through this particular difficult situation, but also to very confidently face the future. Today, in 2022, after 2 years, we still do not have the right kind of medication. A specific medication in order to treat the COVID-19 infection. Yes, we do have multiple products which are repurposed in order to handle certain symptoms which are related to the COVID-19 disease, but we do not have a definitive solution. Yes, there are some antivirals which were developed in recent times, like molnupiravir, etc., etc. Are they helpful? Remdesivir, which has been repurposed for this. Yes, certainly they are helpful, but they are not a solution. Vaccines, if you look at, it is a tremendous victory of the scientific community within a very short time to bring such effective vaccines to the people in order to vaccinate the entire population of the world. That is tremendous thing, and I think definitely we should pat ourselves, and I really clap for all those scientists who have done a tremendous job on that. So taking that as a basis, going ahead, taking that as a template, I think even in the peacetime, which is going to emerge probably in a couple of years, without forgetting the kind of problems we have faced, we need to come up with much more definitive and bigger and economical solutions to the humanity. So I call upon all the faculty and also the students of this great institution to work in that direction in order to find the solutions and help the world with better preparedness for the upcoming zoonotic infections, and probably with a capacity to evolve into an epidemic or pandemic. Okay. So in this journey, definitely the medical community or the public health community which I belong to, of course I also have a little affiliation to pharmaceutical industry where I happen to work, and also I have promoted one of the pharmaceutical companies. Let us all take it as a challenge to come out with long-lasting solutions to give solace to the humankind, to bring our kind of contribution to the society, so that it can become healthier, wealthier, and disease-free. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite Rachamala Rishita Reddy to share her feedback of the event.
A very good afternoon. This is Rishita, M Farm Pharmacology, VIPER. I feel proud and privileged to attend this one-week online FDP SDP webinar on recent advances in science and technology innovations. Isn't it, friends? Yeah, I hope same from you all. Thank you, Dr. Oyen Tiwari, sir, for giving information on biotechnology potential, conservation of cyanobacteria, and significance of biodiversity hotspots and its commercial applicants, for giving your insights on this topic of whole experience in 1 hour session. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rangareddy, sir, for enlightening us on the title of COVID-19 Endgame. It's really very awesome on the concept of lessons learned for future preparedness. A special thanks to Pavan Jutu sir, Gopinath sir, Soumya ma'am and Biswanath sir. The heartfelt thanks to Team VIPER and management for making all this happen. Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Rishita. Now I request Principal Sir to present mementos to Chief Guest and Guest of Honor. Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. K. Vanitha, convener of the event, to propose vote of.
A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries, principal, faculty, delegates, and my dear students from various colleges across India. It gives me immense pleasure to propose vote of thanks on 5-day session on FDP on recent advances in science and technology on behalf of Vishnu Institute of Pharmaceutical Education and Research. I would like to thank all the resource persons for delivering a startling lecture, and we are grateful to you, sir, and hope to see you in such programs in future. I thank to our management for trusting us and always embrace us to conduct such events. I thank to our principal, Dr. A. Ramesh, chairman of this event, who always behind us and motivate to do such programs. Special thanks to Dr. Oyen Tiwari, principal scientist, ICAR, IARA, New Delhi, and co-chairman of this event for taking this initiation for this program. Last but not the least, I am thankful to all the network and supporting team, especially Mr. Fahimuddin, Suryam, Mr. Suresh, and Mr. Rahul, who plays a major role for the success of any event, who are not in limelight, but without them nothing is possible. Thanks to all the faculty, delegates, and students of VIPER and various organizations across India for participating in the event and making the event a huge success. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. I request everyone to please stand up for national anthem.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे